welcome to our October Wednesday wake-up breakfast. My name is Matt Lewis. In case I'm guessing you've noticed that I am not Morton Blackwell. Morton is actually away on business this weekend, so I'm going to be filling in for him. And I have to admit to you that I was not Morton's first choice. Unfortunately, Bill Bradley was not able to be here this morning, so I'm proud to accept your nomination for Senate to the great state of Virginia. In 2002, the Leadership Institute has trained 2,500 students in 115 schools. We've placed 45 job seekers through our employment placement program. And you have before you our 2002 school schedule. Please take a moment to review this calendar and consider attending one of our programs. And I may add that the Grassroots Activist School is a very good program that you'll see. You might want to check that out too. At this point, I'd like to introduce Sabrina Parker for Invocation and Pledge of Allegiance. Sabrina is interning here this fall in the accounting department. She comes to us from Hera, Oklahoma, and is a second-year grad student at the University of Oklahoma. She's getting her degree in accounting. She also has a BA in psychology. Sabrina plans on getting her CPA license and going into public policy or the FBI. Please welcome Sabrina.
Everyone could bow their heads. Our dear Heavenly Father, we're so grateful for this wonderful day. We're grateful for this opportunity to gather together in fellowship with this great organization of the Leadership Institute. We're so grateful for all that it has allowed us to do and for all the opportunities it opens unto us. And we're so grateful for all the hard work that's put into this organization and for the wonderful things that it produces. And we're grateful for this wonderful day and for all of our many blessings. And please bless our country and our president and all that we do. And we're grateful for these many things. And we humbly pray in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
The pledge. Everyone can stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, I'd like to introduce Billy Parker, who's going to give us an update on our campus leadership program. Billy began working for the Leadership Institute in 1998 and is a proud Southern boy from Rich Square, North Carolina. His favorite president is also Abraham Lincoln. He's a regional director for the Institute's campus leadership program, where he organizes conservative clubs on college campuses. His region covers all states east of the Mississippi. Billy graduated from NC State University in 1998 with a degree in political science. In the future, Billy plans to be a business owner and a state rep in North Carolina. Please welcome Billy Parker.
Thanks, Matt. You guys hear me? Great. Thanks, Matt. It's good to see so many bright and awake conservatives this morning, and I'm making the assumption you are awake because it is very early. But, moving on. The Campus Leadership Program continues to provide a conservative voice for college students all across the country. We do this by training students. We give them techniques, tools to make them effective on their college campuses. We, in fact, are bringing the conservative revolution to a college campus near you. In the short life of the Campus Leadership Program, we have already started 244 independent conservative groups. I repeat, 244 college campuses are being impacted with conservative students that are trained and ready to make a difference. We're in 41 states across the country. Our most recent addition is the University of Notre Dame, which we picked up about 2 weeks ago. We're very excited about that. We don't only start conservative organizations, but we also start independent conservative papers. For example, University of Florida Gator Standard, you see here with the smiling Morton, and the the group that puts out the paper there. They made a huge impact at Florida with their publication that they put out once a week. It's great. It's a great way to get the message out there. A lot of times a campus publication may tend to lean a little to the left, so we try to even the playing field a little bit with that. Not only do we put out the publications, but we try to help students with events. You know, a lot of times campuses really aren't known to bring great conservatives into lecture to their students. So that's fine. You know, we'll work, you know, with the students to help them bring them in independently, and they do that. For example, actually tonight, John Stossel is going to be speaking at the University of Texas on freedom and its enemies. And we really helped that group put this thing together. They're an organization we worked with and got off the ground, so they're able to get a conservative message out tonight. Also, we're working with Dan Flynn from Action Academia, and he's going to be speaking on his book, Why the Left Hates America. And he's speaking, right now he's scheduled for 7 campuses. We're hoping to add a lot more to that. And an event I'm really excited about, probably the most impact we had this semester, was the Remembering 9/11 project we did, where we had over 30 campuses, 30 colleges that we helped put together materials. We gave them flags, red, white, and blue ribbon. We taught them how to do prayer vigils. Any questions they had, we answered. We showed them how to conduct all this stuff, and we really motivated them to get active and, you know, give out things on campus and spread the, you know, the pro-American message. A lot of college campuses, you know, you'd be surprised, even on 9/11, there's no pro-American message. So we had students out there handing out ribbons, which is an image I know I'm excited to you know, imagine. Now, a clear-cut example of why we need something like this is, for example, the University of Berkeley. Now, we all know Berkeley's a pretty conservative university in itself, but even with that, they had a minor problem. The student government, in its infinite wisdom, decided, you know, maybe red, white, and blue might be offensive. Maybe we should just use white. We don't want to offend anybody. You know, it's 9/11. Let's just go with white. So they decided to go with white ribbons, not red, white, and blue. Not only that, that's bad enough. They decided the American flag. Yeah, well, that might offend people too. So yeah, we better not fly that either. And I quote, I mean, this is worth quoting from the press release we received. On the red, white, and blue ribbons, they said, because they didn't want anything too centered on nationalism or anything that was, quote, go USA. Unbelievable. On the American flag, they made a statement, it's a hostile symbol of U.S. aggression towards other countries. The American flag. This is campus. This campus is not in, you know, Iraq. This campus is right here in America, and these are the kind of things we have going out from the student government on the campus. The good news is the students didn't stand for it. You know, they called us and told us what was going on. We're like, all right, well, you know, get out there and, you know, rattle the chains and change this. And they did. They called press. They did everything they could do. And the university reversed the decision, allowed the red, white, and blue ribbons and the flags. I'm happy to say they gave out 4,000 American flags on campus and a number of ribbons. Now, I wish I could sit here and tell you that you know, they're the only that's just a random outrage story. It's not. This happens every single day on college campuses. Every day they face these outrages. And that's why we have organizations like the Campus Leadership Program to combat this. As far as the training, I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with our Youth Leadership School. Leadership Institute trains a lot of the young students with this school. The ones we've had in September are in Visalia, California, Provo, Utah, and Louisville, Kentucky. Coming up this weekend, we have one in Oklahoma City. I don't know if anyone's going to be in Oklahoma City this weekend, but if you happen to be there, we'd love to have you. Also, we're having one 9th and 10th of November here in Arlington, Virginia, right here where you're sitting right now. So I hope if you know someone that may be interested, please let them spread the information to them. We'd love to have them here. The more conservative students we train, the better. So please let everyone know about that. And as I mentioned, our latest school is in Louisville, Kentucky. And we had the privilege and honor of having former Governor Louis Nunn in attendance. And he's a great teacher and taught a lot about how youth politics has changed and has been made such an impact and changed actual elections, as an example. And so he taught the students ways they did that. And I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with the impact he made on Morton. And he has, through that, Governor Nunn has impacted the Leadership Institute. So we were very privileged to have him there. It was a great educational tool. In conclusion, I wish I had more time. I could talk about outrageous stories all day long, things we're doing on campus, events, papers, and so forth. But don't have that long. I'm sure you don't want to stay here that long this morning. You have things to do. But all of you should have a campus leadership program brochure on your table. In this, it gives you an overview of our programs, so please check it out. Also, in the back, I'm going to refer you to the reply card. If you know of anyone, or if you're interested yourself in getting involved with the Campus Leadership Program, please fill it out, send it in. We really encourage to get as many people involved as possible, so please take the time to do that. And also on the back, somewhere here, we have the webpage. So if you want more information, just go to our website and you can learn more about our program. Also, there we go. If you want more information, you can contact me personally. I'd love to talk to you in more detail about our program. Just give me a call here at the Leadership Institute. I'd be glad to speak with you. Here's my information. And I just want to thank everyone. I want to take this time to, our students can't be here themselves, but on behalf of them, I want to thank all of you, because I know a lot of you have been a support for them, and they appreciate it. They really, really do. They count on us, and with our help, they can make an impact on their campus. So thank you for that. I appreciate it. And have a great morning, and thank you so much.
All right, there we go. It takes a second to kick in. Thank you, Billy Parker, for that great introduction about the Campus Leadership Program. As most of you know, that the campus program is probably one of the neatest things that we do here at the Leadership Institute, getting to go out to campuses. And if you have a chance to ever talk to Billy, there really are some crazy stories. The guys and ladies who go out to these campuses are subjected to some really wild stuff when they go out and have a big sign behind them that says "Conservatives sign up here," and a picture of Ronald Reagan and Hillary Clinton. It's quite interesting what they're subjected to. And now I'd like to introduce Amy Hamilton for the introduction of our speaker. Amy is originally from Texas and works here in our grassroots department as the grassroots coordinator, working to develop campaign training opportunities for individuals. Amy's one of our top trainers, lecturing for the grassroots schools, the Campaign Leadership School, the National Federation of Republican Women in Leesburg, and the RNC's 72-hour task force. Before joining the grassroots team in 2000, Amy completed an internship under Institute President Morton Blackwell and completed a detailed study on first-time donor renewal. Please welcome Amy Hamilton.
Thank you, Matt. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Mrs. Hazelwood, thank you for being with us today. As I review just a few of Blaise's achievements, there's a phrase I'd like you to keep in mind. One of Morton's laws is that in volunteer politics, a builder can build faster than a destroyer can destroy. So keep that in mind as we talk a little bit about what Blaise has done for the conservative movement. In 1997, Blaise was the coalition's director for Jim Gilmore's successful race for governor. There she coordinated grassroots voter contact, press, and volunteer activities. In 1998, Blaise managed Brian Palmer's campaign against Congressman David Bonnier. Blaise built the campaign from the ground up, orchestrating the campaign strategy. She executed a $1 million advertising plan. And as a result of her hard work, Palmer held Bonnier to the lowest percentage of his career. In 1999 and 2000, the RNC recognized her campaign expertise and hired Blaise to redevelop the RNC's campaign management colleges, and she revamped the entire agenda and program. Then in 2000, Blaise served as director of coalitions for Victory 2000, where she worked with the Bush-Cheney team. Blaise implemented the campaign's plan for coalition voter contact and grassroots organization. Those programs focused on energizing and turning out pro-life voters in 22 battleground states. She also spearheaded non-traditional Republican outreach, including work with Latino, Catholic, and many ethnic American groups. Currently, Blaise Hazelwood serves as the RNC political director and oversees all of their campaign operations. Previously, Blaise served as deputy chief of staff, easy for me to say. Previously, Blaise served as deputy chief of staff at the Republican National Committee. Her accomplishments at the RNC include overseeing the creation and expansion of the RNC Team Leader Program, building on the Bush 2000 program, and managing the 72-hour task force that's instrumental in reinvigorating and refining the GOP campaign efforts even as we speak. She currently resides with her husband Dan in Alexandria, Virginia. And in light of all of that, I would just like you to keep in mind that Morton says a builder can build faster than a destroyer can destroy. And Blaise Hazelwood has worked to build the conservative movement through grassroots, training, and building coalitions. So please, a warm welcome for Blaise Hazelwood.
I have to say, I've never used one of these microphones before, so forgive me if I knock it around or do something to it. Can everyone hear me okay? It's great to be here today because the last couple of days I've spent with Governor Roscoe, Chairman Roscoe of the Republican National Committee, and we have gone around Washington, D.C. to the different to the press corps, kind of doing a meet and greet, talking about this year's elections. So we went to yesterday, the Washington Post and CNN and all those great newspapers like New York Times, and you can imagine how it is. I mean, you walk into the room and you go into a conference room and the good guys sit on one side, the bad guys sit on another side, and everyone puts down their tape recorders in the middle of the table just to make sure nothing gets taken out of context. And it's a surreal experience. I mean, you're sitting there staring at someone in the face that at one time or another you wanted to kill. I mean, the whole thing kind of shocks me because the press, have you noticed how when you're talking about different elections, they'll say, well, in this race, the Republicans, may be ahead 1 or 2 points, but it's all within the margin of error. That race is within the margin of error. And then they talk about a Democrat who's a couple points ahead, and they forget the whole margin of error thing. It's not, it's no longer relevant. That Democrat's ahead. So it's been a long couple of days, and so I'm very happy to now be amongst friends here at the Leadership Institute. They asked me to come talk to you today about the 72-hour task force, and so I'm going to go through a quick presentation on that. Just to give you a little bit of background on it, I think all of us can remember very distinctly Election Day 2000. And I remember because I was at the RNC, and I hate being in the building on Election Day. I'd much rather be out in the trenches, but I was stuck at the RNC, and we were all sitting around and we were, saying, okay, well, if we lose, Michigan, we can win Tennessee and we can win West Virginia. And we're adding up the map, all different ways to figure out, how we're going to win this election. And all of us had, a pretty good feeling. I'm not great. Very nervous, but there was a general, feeling, okay, we're going to win tonight. And then going to the election parties that night, and there was some party at some downtown hotel in Washington, D.C. that I was forced to attend. And I went into the back room and was watching TV in this, the green room type place. And that's when, the press announced that Gore had won Pennsylvania, and then they announced that Gore had won Florida. And thank God, Karl Rove got on TV and made Florida neutral. But just remember the sinking feeling, in my stomach, and everyone is like, oh my gosh, what's happening? This isn't going the way that we planned it to go. And then going back to the RNC and up all night, and then everyone knows the story for the next, month or so. And once the president was finally sworn into office, a bunch of us looked back and said, how did the Democrats sneak up on us like that? Like, how did we not see that coming? What happened in those final 72 hours? And that was the reason that we put together the 72-hour task force in the first place. And let's see if I can figure out how to use this. Okay. The 72-hour task force, as you can see, was a joint project. A whole bunch of people worked on this project together, including the White House, the NRCC, the Senatorial Committee, anybody that was interested in being a part of the project, we had them join in. And just to go through what the mission of the task force was first we wanted to figure out, okay, exactly what did happen in the final stages. So we went through and we had meetings every single week, and we brought in Democrat consultants, we brought in Republican consultants, we brought in male consultants, phone, anybody we could get, anybody would come talk to us, and just lay it all on the table. Anything we could find out what they do and what we do too, because we never really look at exactly what Republicans do in terms of turnout. And then from that we came up with different. We found problems and in what we do in terms of turnout, and then we came up with tests to provide solutions to those problems, and then we did those tests in 2001, and that's what I'm going to run through. And from those tests, we came up with solutions, which I'll quickly run through as well. And then we've been doing training around the country. So to simplify it, we really set it up in these 3 points, as you can see here. Defining the problem, testing the different solutions, and coming up with a prescription for victory. First, defining the problem. And this part, I warn you, is not the fun part of the presentation, but it's kind of like we put in terms of being an alcoholic. You can't fix being an alcoholic until you admit that you're an alcoholic. You can't fix a problem until you admit that you have a problem. And that's what sometimes happens in, Republican politics. We all think that we know best and we know the best way of doing things, and we never sit down and think, okay, how can we actually do things better? And so that's what we've tried to accomplish with the 72-hour task force. And what we found is that, and all of you know this, that in the 80s and 90s, Republicans did better in terms of grassroots turnout. And then somehow we lost our way, as I would say, and just started going on TV, and the unions turned and put everything they had into grassroots turnout. And so just to figure out, okay, did we actually lose in the final 72 hours? That was like the first question we put on the table. And the way we went about answering that question is we took all of the both external polls and internal polling that we did in the Saturday before the election, and anything we could get our hands on. And then we compared it to actual election results. And as you can see here, the red bar is the polling the Saturday before the election, and the yellow bar is the actual election results. And like in Arizona, the weekend before, the Saturday before, we were winning by 10 points, but we only won by 6 points. And these are the states that Bush won. In Florida, we were winning by 2 points, our poll showed us, and we all know what happened in Florida. And this was across the board the same thing we found happening in states that Bush lost. Again, same trend. The Saturday before, our poll showed us winning by 1 point. Washington State, we lost by 5. And so what happened in those final 72 hours? And many people asked us, this trend held true across the board. And we looked at like all 50 states, and we found that the margin was a little bit different when we looked at our internal polling from the external, from the media polls, but it's still the same trend. We were underperforming by a couple of points in those final 72 hours. Well, some people asked me, they said, well, do you think that in 2000 that had to do with Bush's DUI? Do you think that depressed the base and that they didn't turn out because of that? And said, that's a really good question. So we went and did the exact same thing for 1998. And we found the exact same thing, that we were underperforming by a couple of points the Saturday before the election to the actual election results. This is just a symbol of the 49% nation. As you all know, I mean, in the last 4 presidential elections, last 4 congressional elections, neither party has gotten 50% or more of the vote. And just that symbolizes how close all these elections are. So again, we looked at everything Republicans do in terms of turnout, everything Democrats do in terms of turnout, and these are the 10 problems that we found that have to be addressed. And first is, we're not using enough people in campaigns. This is the most important. We've gotten away from person-to-person campaigning. Second problem, unreliable geographic organization. What I mean by that is there's no longer real precinct captains. You may put them down on an Excel chart to make your candidate happy, but they're not real people who produce real votes. Third, we know this to be true. The left is outspending the right 8-1 right now. The left-leaning interest groups. The fourth problem is that we're not turning out our base in high enough numbers, and I'm going to show you a chart that shows that. And by not enough new Republican voters, we've gotten out of the business of registering Republican voters. We kind of said motor voter can do that, and we don't need to deal with that, but we have to get back into that business. Our mail-in phone efforts tend to be way too broad. We Republicans think we can just mail everyone on taxes, and that's fine. We just do the general theme of the campaign, while the Democrats are mailing people on issues that they care about, issues that motivate them to go vote. And also our mail-in phone efforts tend to be not targeted and not sharp enough. Like the Democrats will mail people and say, if you vote for a Republican, your grandmother's going to die. And we, again, mail them on taxes. The Democrats are turning out their base much higher than we are. And again, another problem where I think the Republican Party's gotten kind of lazy is absentee and early voting. Again, early 90s, late 80s, if it came to election day and we were tied, it was tied on election day, we knew that we would probably win with the absentee votes. Once the absentee votes were counted, we could no longer count on that. And so we have to get stronger in that area. And finally, and probably the second most important after using people, is that we don't plan our final 72 hours. Once the last TV ad's up on the air, then we say, okay, what are we going to do for our get out the vote the last week of the election? We need to start planning this way, way in advance, and that's what we've been doing with all of our state parties. And I added this today, that the 11th problem is political consultants. And this came from Morton, who couldn't be here today, but I'm sure, I don't know if all of you have seen the letter that he sent out to the Republican National Committee members, but basically saying, the 72-hour task force is a great idea and it's great that it's being implemented, but the people who are going to try to stop that are the political consultants who are no longer going to make all the big bucks off of the TV when we're concentrating on grassroots. So I agree with Morton that there's a problem. This symbolizes what we just talked about. Republicans see get out the vote, GOTVs get on the van, while get on TV, while the Democrats see it as get on the van. So, like I said, we did a bunch of tests. We did over 50 live tests in 2001, taking those problems, coming up with some solutions, and testing them in the 2001 elections and a couple of special congressional elections. And I'm going to go through a couple of those tests today. And please feel free to ask any questions as we go along. This is, again, defining our people problem. I don't know if you all have seen Hillary Clinton's plan when she ran for Senate in New York, but she had an extensive get out the vote plan. She started 6 months earlier, and this plan covered everything down to block captains. And even if, it's like any plan, even though if Hillary Clinton's team only did 1/10 of what's in that plan, it's probably 10 times more than what we Republicans usually do. And also, like I said, the unions have turned from being on TV to a ground game. So we went and did a whole bunch of different tests using people. And this is going to seem very simplistic. This is simplistic. It's back to the basics. And the first test that we did, and we did about 4 different tests on this, was flushing the Monday and election day. And what I mean by that is just putting someone, having teams go door to door the Monday before and put door hangers on people's doors, and then on Tuesday having someone in the election poll place checking off who had voted, and then sending teams of people to go drag the known Republicans who haven't voted out to vote. Again, simple concept. We used to do this in the past. People aren't doing it anymore. When we did it, we showed in one place that we did the test almost 4% better. Just doing that Monday, Tuesday program. Another place, over 2% better. Another test that we did was putting a person on the ground for 1 month and basically being a precinct captain, doing the old Catston plan. That's all I had to do was go door to door and ask people what they cared about, go back, talk to them, and then make sure that they got out to vote. Pretty simple. Look at the difference it made. 4.3% in one of our tests, above 2% in another couple of our tests. Now, obviously, this isn't, major. It's not like we're not talking about 20 points here. We're talking about a couple of points. But we all know from, Florida, Washington State, New Mexico, that these couple of percentage points make a difference in an election. And this is my all-time favorite test. This was volunteer calls versus paid calls. And what we did is we gave volunteers 1,000 phone calls, and we gave a paid phone vendor 1,000 phone calls. And this was done in the South Carolina special congressional election, which was a week before Christmas. And so people weren't paying attention, as you can imagine. Our volunteers did over 5% better in turnout, in turning these people out. So, volunteer calls do make a difference, and they should, lots of times when you're working on campaigns, you'll have your volunteers make calls, but you rely on your paid phone calls. We just can't do that. We have to go back to volunteer calls. And we've been working with all our campaigns on everything that we've learned in the 72-hour task force. And I think that this quote basically tells it all. That when you're getting so much mail nowadays, and there's so much TV and so many different stations, you're going to remember when someone knocks at your door and talks to you. You're going to remember when you get that volunteer phone call. You need something to break through all of that clutter. Another one of our tests that we did was this coalition turnout, and like I said, the Democrats are outspending us on the left in terms of coalition much more than the right. Like 8-1, they're outspending us. Left of center social groups are outspending us 6-1. I mean, they're beating us. And so we said, instead of just complaining about it, saying we're going to make another group or whatever, we decided to go and try to do it ourselves within a campaign. And that was the reason for this test. And you could look at a bunch of different constituencies to do this test with, but we chose social conservatives, and this really is the reason why. If you look at religious conservatives compared to union households, and you look at that orange bar right here, they both make up about 20% of the population, their base versus our base. Well, then if you look and see what they vote at, what percentage of their population they vote at, In 2000, religious conservatives voted at 14%, and unions voted at 26%. They overperformed by 40%, while we underperformed by 25%. And that's our problem right there. So we decided, okay, how can we increase our base turnout? And we did a program here in Virginia with the early race. And we chose 2 counties. We chose Frederick County and we chose Roanoke County because they have similar vote behavior, but also because they're culturally similar counties. And our test county was Frederick, Winchester, right? Here in Northern Virginia. And we did both paid and volunteer activities in this test. The previous tests I showed you were purely volunteer. And what we did a pre and post survey, first to find out, okay, what do social conservatives care about in this county? And once we found out, we did mail and we did phone calls to them, but we did it all on issues that they cared about. One of those issues, Mark Warner had a quote where he said the views of people of faith and homeschooling as threatening to America. That's what he called them, those views as threatening. So we took that quote and we shared it with all the people in Frederick, social conservatives in Frederick, and also that there was other issues like education and obviously the life issue. We also did a lot of volunteer activity, and I think the reason that we were so successful in getting volunteers is because they weren't just campaigning for a candidate, they were campaigning for a cause, something that they believed in. So we got all the homeschoolers, we got everyone, and they were excited about being part of this process. And what we found is that we did 10 points better among social conservatives in our active county than in our control county. And it's purely simple, doing a campaign to social conservatives. And many times we get caught up in our campaigns and we're like, okay, well, they're going to vote for us anyhow. How could they vote for Mark Warner? He's pro-abortionist. How could they do that? But we're not motivated to go out and vote because no one is telling us about the issues. No one is telling us what's at stake. And so that's what we did. We told people what's at stake, and we made a huge difference in the results. And what that netted on the whole, across the whole county, is the county did 4 points better than our control county. So if it makes a difference, and what we've again taught our state parties and different campaigns is you can't just mail social conservatives one issue on life and that's it and expect them to turn out to vote. You need to have a real campaign aimed at them, talking to them about what they care about. And were you contacted by the early campaign? This is just one of our pre-post survey results that I found interesting. In our active county, 16% more people remembered being contacted by the early campaign. And again, I think that reason is because they were being contacted by issue that they cared about. They remembered being contacted with a pro-life message much more than they would remember being contacted with a pro education or whatever, just a general campaign theme of the early campaign. So, it really made a difference. They remembered being talked to, and they came out and they voted. Now, I wish we had done that across the entire state, that test. Maybe it would have made a difference in election. So, our solution to this is you have to go after a constituency if you want it in a real and serious way. And we can't just wait for the, outside groups to do it. Some are really good, but we have to do it ourselves. Voter registration. Another test that we did, and we did two different tests which I found interesting in this. One was just talking to newly registered voters. Many times in campaigns we just take newly registered voters and don't talk to them because they don't have any type of vote history and they're not on our file, and so we just say, well, they've never voted before, so we're not going to spend the campaign resources talking to them. Well, we took a group in Pennsylvania, and that's not up there, and a county in Pennsylvania, and talked to half and didn't talk to the other half, just newly registered voters, told them where to go vote, and it made a couple points difference. And you'll see in South Carolina, we did the same test. We actually went out and registered the folks in South Carolina, and then split them in half, talked to one group, told them where to go vote, as you're going to see on that piece. See, well, it's a great piece too, but also where their polling location is, because they're newly registered voters. They, lots of them don't know where their voting location is, and we also phone them with the same information. It takes time, it takes extra effort, but it made a difference, as you can see in these results. 6.5% more newly registered voters turned out when we told them where to go vote. But if you also look at it, almost 10% of people we didn't talk to turned out as well. So it makes a difference to register Republican voters. So even if you can't talk to them, but you can up that by just telling them the basic mechanics of voting.
Give them a map. Put a map on.
Yeah, map on it. That's really good too. Targeting. I mentioned earlier that we tend to, in our mail and phone efforts, just talk about the general themes of campaigns. And what is much more effective, we've found, is talking to people, again, about issues that they care about. This gets back to the social conservative issue. Again, talking to people about life, if that's their issue that they care about. It could be a local highway that they care about. We need to find those issues and communicate to voters on that. And we did a couple of tests on doing that, where we identified voters, on their specific issues, and then communicated to them on those issues. And we found in the test in Virginia that we did 3.6% better when we talked to voters about issues that they cared about. Did the same test in South Carolina, again, found the same results, that they, issues that they cared about. And the result of that test, again, is another thing that takes time and involves grassroots activities, is finding out what issues people care about. And you have to do voter identification. And so we did a test finding out the best way to ID voters on their issues. And this has become in the past, we're just like, we get a paid phone bank again and have them call everyone and ask them a couple of questions on issues. And the results were pretty good. Well, nowadays the results are horrible. The connect rate is horrible. No one's answering their phone anymore. They see these out-of-state numbers or the unknown numbers on their caller ID, and they're just not picking up the phone. So we looked and found the best way to get voter identification on people, and the automated calls. You might want to do them at the beginning. Press 1 or say 1 if you're for a certain issue. I know we all hate these calls. I can see the faces. We got 7% of the whole pie. Then doing paid live calls, 18%. But what was most effective is the volunteers. And we actually, and I was surprised by this, having volunteers go door to door and see and actually get results. And they did. People took the 5 minutes to talk to someone at their door and give them information. Same thing with volunteer calls, that we found the same success rate. So again, this is something that we have been working with all of our state parties on doing, is they spent the summer months canvassing voters to find out their issues, and now we're talking to those voters about those issues. The last test, and I'm going to go over today, is what we call Fight for All Votes. And what this was addressing the Democrat base problem. They turn out their base, like I said, in much higher numbers than we do. And typically what we think of the Democrat base is African American voters and union voters. And so we did a test with African American voters. And we did this in New Jersey. And we had 2 test cities. One was where our active test city was Atlantic City, and our control city was Camden City. And in Atlantic City, we ran 5 weeks of black urban radio and saturated the radio stations. And what we found is that when we did this, that we did 6% better amongst the African American community. Now, granted, if you look at it, we started, that's 2% compared to 8%. It's not great, but it makes a difference. if we had done that all across New Jersey, it probably would have made like a 0.5% difference. But that, again, can make a difference in a campaign. We did pre and post survey here too, and if you look at the results, is the one person I never vote for. Well, we improved that by 21 points. They no longer saw Brett Schindler as the demon that they saw him as before when we educated them for 5 weeks on the radio. So we can make a difference, and we can't just let the Democrat base go to Democrats. We have to go after every single vote, especially when you look at the fact that we have this 49% nation. So again, this is another thing where we can't just do a 1 week effort to turn out African American voters. This has to be a long, sustained campaign to reach them. And just to give you a little bit of background of what we're doing at the Republican National Committee, we did all these tests, and this was just a couple of tests here today that I showed you. But we went out to all the state parties and did regional training sessions, and then we've continued to do training, and we've made all of the state parties do these timelines. Okay, when are you going to start your voter registration program? When are you going to start recruiting your precinct captains? How many precinct captains have you recruited? And they all have flow charts like this, and we're keeping up with them every weekend. I have 12 hours of conference calls on the weekends to go with each state over their 72-hour plan, and again find out, okay, today how many volunteers do you have for election day? Last week you had 150 recruited. How many more do you have recruited this week? So we're very serious about this program. It's not something we did at the Republican National Committee so we could print out a book and people could put it on their bookshelves. I mean, we're making this reality, making it happen. And this is just all the different training we've done. We've done, trained 15,000 people, held 95 sessions in 40 different states. So we've trained people how to actually do what we're talking about here today. But more importantly, I think, because it is going back to the basics, a lot of people know how to do it. The more important part is trying to change the culture of the party. Trying to change people from saying we can just simply buy elections to we need to do the hard work and get the volunteers activated and participating in our campaign in order to win. And what we always show people, and I think this is going to work, because they often don't believe it from me.
Now, this is the Victory Squad headquarters, one of many that are in operation throughout the county. It doesn't look like much at the moment. What it needs is people, you and me. The people who volunteer for the Victory Squad go out on election day and ask each and every registered Republican to go to the polls and vote. Months before the election, other volunteers prepare special lists of every single registered Republican in the county so that the work of the Victory Squad can go off without a hitch. The most modern equipment and skilled personnel are used. All the really hard tedious work is done ahead of time so that you can go out to the precincts, meet the people, Republicans who think and believe as you do, and get them down to vote, down to the polls where every ballot counts. In 1960, Nixon lost to Kennedy by 118,000 votes in the entire country. And there were 15 million registered Republicans who stayed home from the polls that day. The Democrats did it. They got their people out and to the polls. Well, let's take a leaf from their book. This person-to-person contact is what counts in elections. It's been proved since the ballot box was invented. It made the difference in the 1960 presidential election. It's still true today. With all the TV campaigning, the mass meetings, the newspaper advertising, the electioneering gimmicks, there is no substitute for down-to-earth, house-to-house, person-to-person contact.
So that kind of just sums it up right there. I can't say it better myself. Yes, ma'am.
One issue you did not address was the weaknesses of the National Committee. When you send out surveys and what have you, and people make comments and ask for a response, they are either not recognized or fall through. My question, with the chaos in New Jersey at this point, depending on what the New Jersey Supreme Court does, is the National Committee prepared to go to the Supreme Court of the United States and show your mettle?
That's a good question. It has been an interesting couple of days with New Jersey. Actually, we have our lawyers going to the Supreme Court this morning in New Jersey, and I can't tell you what our legal strategy is, to be honest with you, because I haven't been privileged to those conversations. I mean, we're going to do, we're going to follow the law. I mean, this whole thing has been about following the law. I mean, he couldn't follow it in the beginning, and so that's how come he has gotten himself into the situation he is now, and now he can't follow it again to get his name off the ballot when it was supposed to be 50 some days ago that he was supposed to remove his name from the ballot. So I mean, we're going to follow this through to the end. I can't tell you. I couldn't even tell you if it is going to the Supreme Court, but trust me that we're very actively involved in this situation. I still believe that we're going to win New Jersey.
I wonder if you commented on some of these Senate races, particularly in Midwest, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, Colorado. How we do it?
Yeah, well, we everyone knows about our big 4 challenger races. They're actually, it used to be just 3. It was Minnesota, Missouri, and South Dakota. And we added the 4th one, New Jersey, and that came out of nowhere, and we were very happy and to add that into the gang. It's close. I mean, we are. Last week, every poll that I saw for those races, we were up, which was good. We were up by about 4 points in each race. So, I mean, they're looking good, but and everyone is like I said, I went to the newspapers the last couple of days and talked to them, and they all think that this, the Iraq situation is going to, the issue for Republicans, and we're going to win because of this issue. But I don't know how you guys feel, and I'd actually like to hear some comments. But when you're out there, there is voters don't seem as intense. There's not a large voter intensity out there. They don't seem to really realize that there's an election coming up, and that makes me nervous. And I don't know what we need to do. I mean, we have these grassroots programs, and we're going to do them well. But what do we need to do to fire up our base? Because right now, I don't think that they're ginned up about this election. But I do think that we have just to finish up your question on the Senate races. They're looking good, but we need to pull them over the line. Yes, ma'am.
I'm a precinct captain.
Okay, great.
I'm paying a lot of attention, and I think that the last screen that you had up about the things that need to be done is very accurate. It was the notes that I had written down here, and one of them that I would really think is important is that I think that Republicans for a long time have failed to energize their base.
Right.
They do things, they take them for granted, and they do things that because they're trying to, get those middle votes.
Right.
I understand that they're important, but when you don't make the people who really want to vote for you want to come to the polls, then you're going to lose in that respect more than you gain by trying to appeal to soccer moms or whoever is the target of the moment. And I just think that in connection with that, the thing that happens is that the candidates are not vigorous in their response to the demagoguery that comes out of the Democrat Party.
Did everyone hear what she had to say? I wish you could come up here to the microphone. But she was again saying that lots of times we Republicans worry so much about the swing vote that we don't concentrate on our own base vote, and that's where it's really going to make a difference, especially looking at these last 72 hours, I believe. And many times we don't respond to the Democrats' attacks, and we need to. Yes, sir.
Is everyone?
Well, I think another problem.
Do you want to come? Do people want to come up here so everyone can hear? Or no? Okay.
Talk loud.
Okay, good.
Another problem that we have, I think, I've been precinct captain and done a lot of these. In poll watching, I noticed something last year. As I sat checking off Republican favorables, the Democrat sitting next to me, I'd say a good third of the time, was checking off the exact same voters on his favorable list. So the lists we're working from, I don't know whether my list was bad or his, but considering the outcome of the election, I don't have a lot of faith in the one I was working on. Of course, we have a unique problem in Virginia, since we don't register by party, and we have to find another way. But we do also need to spend some time on making sure those favorable lists really are favorable.
Right. I agree with you. And that's one thing we have spent a lot of money and time on at the RNC is getting our lists up to date, especially after redistricting, is to get them in tip-top condition. But you're right, the lists can make a difference in an election. Yes. There's so many hands. Yes, sir.
There's a factor in
Okay.
the last election that I think we need to acknowledge. I call it the lean and mean, brutal Donna Brazil phenomenon. This last 72 hours, full-scale attack with sharp nails. Nail us to the wall. Now, if we want to get our people out, I think we need to have a similar type of strategy. And for conservative, social, conservatives, it's red meat stuff.
Right.
And when the red meat isn't there, when it's pablum, when it's the soft stuff, guess what? Oh, they're the same old wishy-washy types. So I think that if you go to the union model and the core social conservative model, you've got the major part of the solution there. It's not to get that tweak the 0.5% maybe of the a minority vote that might come out and help us. It's to get that 20% out.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yes, sir.
I'd just like to say that as a native Pennsylvanian,
yes,
I was amazed to see Pennsylvania go Gore in the last election, and there were all kinds of rumors of massive voter fraud in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. And,
Missouri,
and
yes.
my question is, at what point do we find a way to motivate the law to be enforced so that we make an example of a few folks? And then I want to go one step further and ask a question. The League of Women Voters has recently taken some political positions, which is very amazing that someone who would run the poll would choose a decision to look one way or the other. So, or have a view one way or the other, which makes me wonder how neutral our pollsters are. What are we doing about these issues?
Well, on the voter integrity, we have placed a lot of emphasis on this year. I mean, in each of our states, we have programs set. We're doing training around the country, and I feel fairly confident that we have the teams in place to combat them. And I think you're right. What we need to do is show examples to the press, and so therefore our lawmakers are forced to change the practices. And I think that's the only thing that we can do, and we're going to do that in Pennsylvania. We have.
We put them in jail.
Yeah, exactly. I think I'm only allowed one more question. I'll take this side. Okay.
Blaise, does the party have a contingency plan to guard against being rabbit or kidney punched, as we were in '92 with the indictments coming out on Iran-Contra, which we saw Bush 1 coming back just before the weekend. It was a Friday. The indictments were announced, went back down and lost the election. And this latest election, 2000, with the DWI coming out against George W. Bush by the Democrats. I mean, they clearly played very, very radical hardball at the end. And I realize the plan is in part to guard against that type of thing, but is there a specific kind of crisis response that you're thinking about? I mean, this is going to happen again.
Oh, I agree with you. I think, you addressed it, is that we put all of these teams in place. They've planned, they're ready to go out the weekend before the election. And if something like this happens, this time, we can quickly print out material or whatever it is and get this out to people, when we're knocking on doors, when we're doing our lit drops and all of our other final programs. I don't think in the past that we had such a a program in place, this early out. So I feel that we can, if something like this happens, which it probably will, you're right, we can quickly get our message out with all of our volunteers. I hope so. Well, thank you everyone for having me here today.
Thank you very much. Great presentation. And I wanted to give to you on behalf of Morton Blackwell and the Leadership Institute one of our Adam Smith scarves.
Oh, great. Thank you.
Wear it with pride, and maybe we'll see it on TV someday. But thank you. It was great. And again, another round of applause for Blaise for coming out. As you know, the Leadership Institute is a 501c3 educational foundation. But it's always great to have folks from political parties here to tell us what they're up to. And I could tell by the questions being asked from the peanut gallery that everybody was really interested in her remarks. So very good job. At this point, I'd like to introduce Jane Barnett, who's going to come up and give a special presentation right now. Please welcome Jane Barnett in our Donor Development Department.
We have a special guest with us today, and I want you all to help me wish her a very happy birthday. Josephine Pulvari has been coming to Wednesday Wake Up Club breakfasts ever since they began. She was at our ribbon cutting ceremony here at Leadership Institute. She's been to our summits. She's been to every special event. She's been on the roof for the 4th of July. She's been down the street with the soiree. She's just always here. And she's a very, very special friend of Morton and the Leadership Institute. Today she's celebrating her 91st birthday, and we are so happy she's here. Before I ask you to sing happy birthday with me, I'm going to show you the 2 gifts that I'm going to give her. Because she has been at so many breakfasts, so many events, probably many more hours spent here than any student, we're giving her an honorary LI graduate pin from the programs department. And we're giving her from Morton himself a treasure that he holds very dear to him, a very special book. So please welcome Josephine Pulvari, and please sing Happy Birthday to You. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Josephine. Happy birthday to you.
Please join us on Wednesday, November 6th for our next breakfast with special guest, Mr. Dan Flynn, author of Why the Left Hates America. That should be an interesting one. I would also like guests who would like to take a tour to meet Sarah Levy at the podium at the conclusion of our breakfast. She will depart immediately for a tour. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next month.